a little different from the bacteria that breaks down animal waste. It's a little bit different from the bacteria that breaks down. Every different organic product probably has a slightly different microbe that decomposes it. So if you're using a compost, what I would call a single source compost, cotton burr compost for instance, you only have huge numbers of the microbes that break down cotton burrs. If you are using a compost, and New Earth, I mean, you ought to see the list of stuff that goes into their compost. Basically anything organic they can find that's clean goes into their compost. Everything from old ice cream to everything else. When they've got 30 different feedstocks, so to speak, going into their compost, they've got the greatest diversity of microbial life in the compost that comes out. That's what John Dromgoole does with his revitalizer from Ladybug. That's why I think that New Earth makes the best bulk compost out there. I'm sorry to say, I think Gardenville's is the worst on the market these days. Back when Malcolm Beck ran the show, it was outstanding. But I have not been especially pleased with their compost in the past 5 years or so since Malcolm doesn't own the company anymore. So if you're going to buy it in a bag, buy Ladybug Revitalizer. If you're going to buy it by the truckload, buy New Earth. Now, you don't have to buy it from New Earth. You can buy their compost from Stone and Soil Depot. You can buy it, depending on where you are, from Virginia Twins in Pleasanton. And if anybody's from Victoria, they've got it at Earthworks. But overall, I like New Earth's compost better than anybody else. Fertile Garden makes a good compost too, but if you ask me what's the best for the money, buy the truckload, I tell you New Earth.
Are they located locally? Or?
They're out, if you're going out I-10 east toward Seguin, about halfway between 410 and 1604, there's a great big water tower. It sits on the right-hand side. Their sales yard is almost underneath that water tower. If you look up on the back of that hill, there's 60 acres of compost operation up there. Yes?
Y'all be kind because I'm a chemical person going to be an organic.
It's a 5-step program. She's in recovery. Yeah.
Okay. What's wrong with the compost that I've been buying in the bag from Home Depot?
Again, it is probably a single source compost. It's not bag compost. But if you had a choice, would you rather eat low-grade hamburger or prime rib? Low-grade hamburger coming from down here. Again, it's single source, and it's cotton burr what it is. But
and can I stretch the benefit of compost? Let's say I want to make the jump to Ladybug, which is probably going to scare me because it's going to cost 3 times what I'm used to paying. Can I stretch the benefit of compost in my yard and in my container plants by using compost tea?
That's a great question. Compost tea is merely taking the microbes out of the compost and treating them to the point they become the sexiest little microbes in the world and reproduce 10,000 times faster. Compost tea has virtually no humic acid, virtually no solid material in it, but it is full of life. So not only can you stretch it, but if you use compost tea regularly, you might not really need to use that much compost to begin with. Yes, sir.
I got a stupid question my neighbor had. How do you make compost? What is compost really?
That's a great question. Anything that was once alive will decompose. And compost is merely decomposed organic material. When it's partially decomposed, we call it mulch. While it's still going through the decomposing process, it's taken a lot of stuff out of the air in order to decompose. We don't want to put it in the ground at that point or it'll steal nutrients out of the ground. We want it up on top of the ground. If you want to create the simplest compost in the world, you build a pile of stuff out there and you let it rot. That is called static pile composting. It's probably the best thing we do. If you want to really speed it up, you add a little bit of moisture to it. You add a little bit of energy source, be it molasses or sugar or old Coca-Cola. If you want to speed it up a little bit, you turn it every now and then. But the thing that breaks down, especially woody material, sawdust, twigs, things like that, is not so much bacterial as it is fungal. And when you go out and you're turning over a big pile of leaves, you know that white stringy material you see all through there? That is good fungus working out there decomposing those leaves. Now, if you've been taken into buying one of these $150 what they call barrel composters, you throw it in there and you go out and you turn it like that every day, is that good? It's real good for you because you got some exercise out of the deal. Does it produce good compost? Well, again, I say there's no such thing as bad compost, but let's stop and think. When we're turning that pile constantly, are we letting that fungus grow? No. We're getting compost that is basically 100% bacterial based, because those bacteria, when I show them to you in the microscope, you'll see, if you don't already know, they're tiny, 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 tiny. But if you want the greatest compost, you want a combination of fungally produced and bacterially produced material. That's why I like the static pile method of letting it sit there and rot. It may take 6 months, it may take a year, but that's the best way to make compost. And the very best compost in the world is what's free, and that's what you make yourself. I think he was next, and then I'll get your question. Yes, sir.
In Howard Garrett's book, he says you can put pet waste in compost pile. What are your thoughts?
All things in moderation. I would not I understand. Again, sometimes we stretch these things out. If you've got kids that need attention or whatever, and you have to go, you're not embarrassing me if you've got a place you got to go. You're going to miss out on some fun stuff. But don't if you gotta go somewhere, you're not hurting my feelings at all. Would I want a compost pile that was all pet waste? No. Would I be worried about bad things in the pet waste? No. People say, well, what about parasites and blah, 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 blah. The same things that may create disease conditions in your animals would not really probably have any effect on you. We have our own set of bugs. And the pet show I do with Dr. Kirby on Sunday, somebody called last week and said, you know, hey, can my kitty cat catch a cold from me? No. And you're not going to catch a cold from your cat. Different viruses. Rhinovirus here, but a different rhinovirus than we get. So I don't think you're looking at any potential health risks or anything else. Now, if you're a pregnant woman, yeah, there is some concern about histoplasmosis is something that supposedly you could pick up from cats and things like that. But as a general rule, if pet waste makes up no more than, say, 5% of what goes into your compost pile, I'm not going to worry about it. Ask you a question. Okay, I do want to get over weed control in just a second.
What would you recommend that now that the weeds are going to start?
Okay, I'm going to talk about weeds next. Yes, sir.
Did I understand you right? You said if you do a constant application of compost tea, that you could do that with and not as a replacement for applying compost.
It would not be as good as compost, but it would certainly help a great deal. But remember, we're putting all those microbes out there. We got to feed those microbes. So if you're using compost tea all the time, you either need a good organic substrate for them to work on, or you need to be supplementing with some molasses and some other things that are going to give them the energy source.
I've been on organic for like 8 years now. Is that...
You don't have any problems. I don't know what you're doing here. No, I bet you have fewer problems in your yard than you've ever had.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got earthworms, and I've never had to aerate.
You go around and you visit all the nurseries in San Antonio, and you go looking for their private shed where they've got the pesticides that they use around the nurseries. You know when the last time we had to spray for a bug here in the nursery was? I can't remember. I mean, maybe we bring in something from the grower and it has a few aphids, and we hit them with little, I don't know, some non-toxic to get rid of the aphids. But we've got more butterflies than we've ever had, more lizards than we've ever had. I won't say snakes because we don't have too many of those. More birds, chiggers, a whole different problem. They're actually a mite. We'll come back to that in a second. But you know, if you're staying organic, you're just not going to have many problems to begin with. You will always benefit from adding more organic material, more organic life, but basically your yard has gotten almost where it's self-sustaining, I'm sure. He's bragging. He didn't really have to He's bragging about his yard.
I like
yes,
to brag on my husband too, Mr. Organic. But he puts the coffee grounds have lots of nitrogen, is that correct?
No, they have a little bit of nitrogen, maybe 1% nitrogen.
Okay, so is it good to put on your yard?
Sure.
Coffee